Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
Good evening and welcome to Gravitas. I'm Palki, Sharma, Upadhyay. Let's get started. Boycott, as a tool of protest and pressure, is contentious. It is also effective. Revolutionaries have used it to great effect. Can world powers wield it as a weapon too? We ask this question because there's a lot of buzz about the boycott of the Winter Olympics in Beijing. For months, rights groups have been going to the International Olympics Council. But activists are mostly seen as a nuisance and a distraction. But the response changes dramatically when a global power moots the question of boycott. In this case, it is the United States. The State Department spokesperson has made some comments and subsequent clarifications. No wonder they have the world's attention. They also have China's rejoinder. America is politicizing the Olympics, says Beijing. About time someone did, we say. The question is, will they put their money where their mouth is? Is a joint boycott on the cards? Which countries could join it? On what grounds? And what does this mean for China, which entered the world stage with another Olympic extravaganza in 2008? On Gravitas tonight, we'll discuss. Also on the show, Pakistan rolls out the red carpet for Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Moscow responds with vaccines and arms deals. But how will China pay? Well, we too are waiting for the answer. How will Pakistan pay, rather? Another big question. Does the AstraZeneca vaccine cause blood clots? Yes, but in rare cases. What should you do? Take the shot or not? We've spoken to some experts and we'll tell you what they said. In Africa, a dam may trigger a regional conflict. Talks on Ethiopia's Nile project have failed. We'll discuss why this is a big deal. And in Sri Lanka, a beauty pageant has taken an ugly turn. The crown was snatched from the winner. She landed in hospital. If you enjoy drama, don't miss this story. We begin as always with Gravitas Global Headlines.
Amid growing global condemnation over humanitarian rights abuses in Xinjiang, China has sentenced 2 Uyghur ex-government officials to death for carrying out what it calls separatist activities in the region. The United Kingdom has paused the trial of the AstraZeneca vaccine in children as regulators try to assess the jab's possible link to blood clots in adults. The Sri Lankan Minister of Public Security, Sarath Verasekara, has said that a radical cleric who is now under detention among 32 other suspects has been identified as the mastermind of the deadly Easter Sunday attack in 2019. The attacks killed 270 people, including 11 Indians. Myanmar troops fired at anti-coup protesters, killing at least 13 people and wounding several, as a series of small blasts hit the commercial capital Yangon and a Chinese-owned factory was set on fire. Mexico's health regulator has cleared India's Covaxin coronavirus vaccine for emergency use. Mexico's foreign minister announced the development via Twitter. The approval comes as Mexico crosses the 200,000 COVID deaths figure, one of the highest in the world. The coronavirus pandemic has tripled Brazil's poverty rate. As per the Getulio Vargas Foundation, nearly 17 million in the country were dragged into poverty in the first quarter of the year. Iran has announced a hike in stockpile of enriched uranium. The country's atomic energy body has said production rate for 20% enriched uranium is 30 to 40% higher than it was before the nuclear deal, and it may be able to produce 120 kilos of enriched uranium in less than 8 months. Smoke from wildfires engulfed the capital of Nepal, as wildfires, which are among the worst in a decade, have resulted in Kathmandu's air quality plummeting to record lows and causing cancellation of several flights. Real Madrid have put one foot in the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League with a dominant 3-1 victory against Liverpool. First half goals from Vinicius Jr. and Marco Asensio put the hosts 2-0 up in the first leg in Madrid. Liverpool did pull one back through Mohamed Salah early in the second period, but Vinicius' second of night restored Real's 2-goal cushion. The second leg at Anfield takes place next week. Runaway Premier League leaders Manchester City will carry a 2-1 lead into their Champions League quarter-final second leg against Borussia. Kevin De Bruyne fired the hosts into the lead in the 19th minute. Close throughout and were rewarded as Marco Reus equalized in the 84th minute. However, 20-year-old Phil Foden scored in the final minute of the regulation 90 to give City a last-gasp win.
The United States says China has committed genocide in Xinjiang. Its human rights report says the Uyghurs are on target. More than 1 million of them were randomly put in jail. They were tortured. Men faced forced sterilization. Women were raped, forced into getting abortions, and then forced into labor. None of this is a secret. The world has known about all of this for a while now. The United States chose to release the report only last month. It went on to slap sanctions on China, but that may not be enough. So Team Biden is considering another way to embarrass China. Boycotting the Winter Olympics in Beijing. They're scheduled for 2022. That's next year. Will the US boycott the Games? Well, they're considering the possibility. We got the first hint on Tuesday. US State Department spokesperson Ned Price was holding a press conference, and he said that Washington wants to discuss a joint boycott with allies.
And you seem to suggest on the Olympics that the U.S. is in consultations with allies discussing whether to consider or plan some sort of joint boycott. Is that the case?
Well, it is something that we certainly wish to discuss, and that it is certainly something that we understand that a coordinated approach will be not only in our interest, but also in the interests of our allies and partners. So this is one of the issues that is on the agenda, both now and going forward. And when we have something to announce, we will be sure to do that.
He couldn't have been clearer. The US will sound out its allies, perhaps ask them to join and withdraw from the Games. The statement created quite a stir, so much so that the State Department came up with a clarification. It said there has been no discussion about a joint boycott with allies. Well, it doesn't say that there will be no discussion in the days ahead. And this is enough to raise the hackles of Beijing. It deployed Zhao Lijian to respond. The wolf warrior-in-chief, what did he say? America is politicizing the Olympics. Listen to what he said.
If the US insists on ignoring the real truth and facts and deliberately uses lies to smear and attack China, this will certainly be doomed to fail. Not only will it damage America's own reputation and interests, but it will also definitely encounter the firm opposition of the Chinese people and a strong response from China.
Is this an overreaction? Not in the least. The call for boycotting Beijing Olympics is not new. Last year in September, more than 160 human rights groups spoke out against China. They wanted the International Olympic Committee, or the IOC, to revoke the Winter Olympic Games from China. Then in October, Uyghur rights groups met the IOC. They shared stories of detainees. They told the Olympic Committee about human rights abuses in Xinjiang and also what's happening in Tibet and Hong Kong. The demand was the same: take the Olympic Games out of Beijing. How did the IOC respond? Not very favorably. According to one Uyghur representative, their concerns were quote-unquote completely dismissed. Zumbrite Arki of the World Uyghur Congress says that the IOC is hiding behind political neutrality and that the committee is willing to host, and I'm quoting again, genocidal Olympic Games. The pressure is mounting not just on China and the International Olympics Committee, but also on the sponsors. Companies like Visa and Coca-Cola, they are the Olympic partners for this event and they're facing criticism. Another sponsor is Airbnb. It is facing tough questions. It is being asked why it is providing lodging in a country that has concentration camps for Uyghurs. For big sponsors, this is a test of their corporate social responsibility. But exiting is not going to be easy. Any boycott is sure to invite a backlash from China. Ask H&M and Nike. They've faced a state-engineered boycott in China. That's because they said that they won't buy cotton from Xinjiang. Moral of the story, boycotting China is not easy. China is going to fight back, but it cannot fight everyone. So the boycott must be a joint effort. How can the world do it? The Eurasia Group is a political risk consultancy firm and it has put together a report. It has listed 3 ways in which the world can boycott the Winter Games in China. Number 1, a diplomatic boycott. That's something that the US has hinted at. America could be joined by at least one other major Western country and boycott the Games in China. The Eurasia Group says that this is the most likely scenario with a 60% probability. The report says the likely participants in such a boycott could be the United States, of course, Canada, the UK and Australia. Some European countries could also join according to them. Possibility number 2, an athletic boycott. What does that mean? 1 or more Western countries could stop their athletes from participating in the Games. They could consider an economic boycott as well, with a ban on US spectators or broadcasters or sponsors. So basically, this option is about discouraging any form of participation at home. And the probability of this happening is 30% according to the Eurasia Group. The final option is an outlier scenario. This one rules out a boycott. Instead, countries could just issue quote-unquote mild political statements about the Games. The Eurasia Group says there is only a 10% chance of this happening. So will the Beijing Olympics be boycotted? Well, we'll have to wait for an answer. Have Olympic Games been boycotted in the past? The answer is yes. The last time this happened was in 1980. That's when the US had led a diplomatic boycott against Moscow, the then Soviet Union. And this was over the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. A total of 65 countries had refused to participate in the Games. Today, if America chooses to take a stand against China and withdraws its athletes from the Winter Games, there's a good chance that many more countries will follow suit. And for China, the trend would be hard to miss. First, governments calling out the genocide in Xinjiang, then international brands following suit, talking about forced labor in Xinjiang's cotton fields. What is China doing about all of these boycott calls? Xinjiang produces 20% of the world's cotton. China cannot afford a boycott here. So it has launched a propaganda campaign which involves fashion shows and musicals, videos of Uyghurs singing, dancing and falling in love on camera. The idea is to show that everything is normal in this province of Xinjiang. The question is anyone buying China's lies?
太复杂了，我想去采风。我就是想把音乐做好，才能给你想要的生活。我想。
How far can you go to win a narrative war? When it comes to China, the country knows no limits. Here's an example. Most of you already know what's happening in this part of the world. This region is called Xinjiang. It is home to Uyghur Muslims. They are an ethnic minority that China has waged a war on. 1 million Uyghurs have been put in these concentration camps. What happens behind these walls can be summed up as forced organ transplants, rape, sterilization, forced conversions, and medical experiments. China is guilty of orchestrating a genocide. Beijing will never accept it. China is also guilty of forced labor. Uyghurs have been forced to work in the cotton fields of Xinjiang. Recently, the EU, Britain and Canada imposed sanctions on Chinese officials. Hell broke loose when H&M issued a statement on forced labor in Xinjiang. More brands followed suit. China pushed back hard. It began punishing businesses that raised questions on Xinjiang. International brands like Nike, H&M and Adidas were taken off Chinese e-commerce apps. They were also removed from maps. Reports say H&M was forced to close 20 outlets. Chinese celebrities publicly junked endorsement deals with international brands. Chinese media openly issued threats. Spokespersons blew the war bugle on social media. And designers turned ramps into battlefields with their patriotic outcries.
As a Chinese designer, of course my support for Xinjiang cotton is correct for me. I think Xinjiang cotton is my sweetheart, my lover. This time, I really want to thank it. It brought me so much joy.
Too much drama? Watch this. This is China trying to portray Xinjiang as a happy place. You know, where Uyghurs sing, dance and fall in love. The Chinese Communist Party has sponsored a musical called The Wings of Songs. It paints a utopian picture of Xinjiang. This is the latest addition to China's propaganda campaign. Like you just saw, the campaign has turned into comedy. Guess what? There's more. Chinese TV stations have been blurring out logos of Western brands. The end result looks like this. People floating on clouds. People whose bodies have disappeared. We told you, China can go really far in a bid to win a narrative war. It's another story that China's bluff was called out long back. And with all the drama, the dragon is now only making a spectacle of itself. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
So in Xinjiang, China is attempting a foul soft power display. But in the South China Sea, there is no such pretense. It's Piracy 101. Illegal military drills, an armada of so-called fishermen, and open threats of annexation. China is a bully. What do you do to defeat a bully? You stand up to them. Is the world doing that? Not enough. For years, world powers have looked the other way. America ignored the Chinese threat, so did Europe, and now they're scrambling to respond effectively. But it doesn't take military power or economic might to stand up. The first thing you need is conviction. And that's the story we're telling you tonight, the story of what conviction can do. Take a look at this map. The sprawling expanse in red is mainland China. Now turn to the tiny speck on the ocean below. Do you see it? That's Palau. It's one of the smallest countries in the world, a union of 500 islands, population less than 21,000. China's smallest cities are bigger than the country of Palau. But what it lacks in numbers and military, it makes up with courage, and bucket loads of it. This country recognizes Taiwan, not the People's Republic. Last month, the island's president, Surangal Whips, visited Taiwan. Traveling with him was the American envoy. One thing's for sure, Palau's president knows how to get under Beijing's skin. This is a leader who's refusing to be bullied by China, and he's walking the talk. Most countries would rush to pick up calls from Chinese officials, not President Whips. He sends Beijing straight to voicemail.
contact me before the elections, but after the elections, I have not taken their calls. Partly just by the way their attitude is. We're a peaceful country. But I give you an example. They have my number. They had my number, so they called me on my cell phone, and I was in the middle of a meeting, but I watched it. It rung 16 times.
The president says China has an attitude problem. We couldn't agree more. China thinks the Pacific Islands are outposts of its maritime empire, but they are not. They are sovereign nations, free to chart their own foreign policy. Today, just 15 countries in the whole world recognize Taiwan, and Palau is one of them, one of the only 15. China is using every dirty trick to turn Palau. It is squeezing the island financially. Chinese tourists are not allowed to visit the island anymore. So big source of income has disappeared. But President Whips is undeterred. And this is something Palau shares with Taiwan, a dogged spirit, a steely resolve to oppose China. And the way things are going, Taiwan might have to dig deep into that resolve very soon. A Chinese carrier ship is currently sailing in Taiwanese waters. It is part of a Navy drill, the first of many according to Beijing. The threat of an invasion is real, and Taiwan is preparing to mount a defense. Later this month, they will kick off a unique military drill. Here's what they plan to do. Use computer simulations to mimic a Chinese attack. For 8 days, they will navigate these simulations to shore up the island's defenses. Beijing thinks it can wrap up an invasion within weeks, a classic case of military god complex. But it is underestimating Taiwan's resolve. The foreign minister says his country is ready for a fight to the end.
Our defense ministry is very determined in defending ourselves. We are willing to defend ourselves, and it's without any question. And we will fight the war if we need to fight the war, and if we need to, to defend ourselves to the very last day, we will defend ourselves to the very last day.
It is time the world joined this fight, not half-heartedly, but with full conviction. The onus is on regional leaders, countries like Japan. Tokyo is yet to join American sanctions against China. What's stopping it? Just a few days back, Chinese vessels sailed near the Okinawa island, and this is Japan's turf, its sovereign territory. There are more than a dozen island nations in the Pacific, and they prize their freedom over Chinese money. What they need is the more powerful countries to lead the way. States like Australia, the Philippines, and Japan. Alone, these countries are open to Chinese designs, but together, they can counter Beijing. The first step is to find a common ground to respond. The Olympics boycott would be a great start, we say. If the Pacific nations join the boycott, it would be an indictment of Chinese expansionism. It would lend more credibility to the anti-China alliance. The 2008 Olympics was China's arrival on the world stage. It seems apt that another Olympics would signal its downfall, because in the intervening period, China has revealed its true colors. And to all those countries still undecided, remember this: the dragon may fly, it may also breathe fire, but it cannot swim. The high seas is where the dragon is slain. Let's turn to China's iron brother, Pakistan. It is busy hosting the Russian foreign minister. A day after his visit to India, Sergei Lavrov flew to Islamabad. This is the first visit by a Russian foreign minister to Pakistan in 9 years. The Imran Khan government is going out of its way to woo Russia's top diplomat. What is it hoping for in return? And more importantly, can it pay for the wares? Here's a report.
It is the first time in 9 years that a Russian foreign minister is in Islamabad. No wonder Pakistan wanted to make every moment count. Pakistan's foreign minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi was at the airport to welcome the special guest. They bumped elbows for the cameras. They even planted a tree. A bit of a contrast from his visit to India, where no trees were planted and no meeting with the Prime Minister was held. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was busy campaigning for state elections. In Pakistan, Imran Khan went all out to quote the Russian. he had a one-on-one dialogue with him. Sergei Lavrov reciprocated to this warm reception. He came bearing gifts. Russia will give more Sputnik V vaccines to Pakistan. So far, Moscow has given 50,000 doses. Enough to kickstart a commercial rollout of the shot in Pakistan. After this visit, Russia will send 150,000 more doses. Lavrov even said that Russia is ready to supply Pakistan with special military equipment. How will Pakistan pay for them? Neither side addressed the question. Instead, they chose to dwell on Afghanistan. It was the main item on the agenda. The impending withdrawal of American troops and the peace talks that have failed to yield a deal so far.
We've also discussed the Afghan situation. Today, Russia and Pakistan see eye to eye on a lot of issues that are being discussed in Afghanistan. We are both interested in restoring peace and stability, and there's very good cooperation taking place on that score.
What he did not mention was where the instability was stemming from. That's something Lavrov raised. The growing terrorist activity in Afghanistan, a potential spillover to Central Asia, and new security challenges for the region.
We are also concerned by the deterioration of the security situation in areas of Afghanistan and by the rise of terrorist activity and ISIS positions in the north and east of the country.
Despite these concerns, it looks like Russia is keen on deepening ties with Pakistan. It is offering vaccines and weapons to Islamabad. It's also building a gas pipeline between Karachi and Lahore. Remember, both Pakistan and Russia maintain close contacts with the Taliban. During his visit to India, Lavrov stressed on the need to include the Taliban in any political settlement. To push that point, Moscow is relying on Islamabad. Pakistan has been sheltering insurgents and supporting them militarily for years now. With an American exit now imminent, Russia seems to be placing its bets on Pakistan to inject itself into the final negotiations. But with America dictating the terms of engagement so far, Russia could be betting on the wrong horse. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Now, a lot of you have been writing to us, wondering why we have not been doing stories on the AstraZeneca blood clot controversy. The answer is simple. We do not know enough. No one does. Some claim the AstraZeneca vaccines are unsafe. Then there are others who contest this claim. Now, we do not believe in peddling half-baked information, let alone spreading vaccine fear. And that's the reason we have been waiting for more data before we could talk about the AstraZeneca controversy on the show. What we'll do tonight instead is try to answer 5 questions that most of you have asked about it. Number 1, what is the controversy all about? Number 2, what do the numbers say? What does the data say? Number 3, what do experts say? Number 4, are vaccine side effects normal? And finally, what should you be doing with all of these reports coming in? Well, we will take these questions one by one. We start with the controversy. What is happening? European nations like France, Germany and the Netherlands have suspended the use of AstraZeneca on people below the age of 60 years. Canada has limited the jabs to those above 55 years of age. Denmark and Norway have suspended the use of AstraZeneca altogether. The question is why, and the answer is because of reports of rare blood clots in the brain. It is known as cerebral venous sinus thrombosis. Some experts fear it is linked to the AstraZeneca vaccines. Is there any evidence? The European Medicines Agency says it has found a quote-unquote possible link between the vaccine and the blood clots. But all those who reported the blood clots had taken the vaccine a couple of days or weeks ago. Most of them were young and middle-aged women. The latest development is from the UK, where a trial on children was paused, again because of the fear of blood clots. So this is a controversy. This is what the news is about. Question number 2, what do the numbers say? How widespread is this vaccine-related clotting? So far, 62 cases of these blood clots have been reported worldwide. 44 of them are in Europe. This includes the European Union, Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway. How many AstraZeneca vaccines have been administered in this region? 9.2 million. So that's 44 cases in 9.2 million, a minuscule figure in terms of percentage. Now let's take a look at Britain. 18 million people have been administered the AstraZeneca vaccine. 30 cases of blood clotting have been reported so far. Of them, 7 have been fatal. 7 fatalities, 30 cases in 18 million. Again, a very tiny percentage. What do these numbers tell you? Well, they do not rule out cases of blood clots. But what they do point at is the rarity. The numbers are very small. Question number 3, what's causing these blood clots? What do the experts have to say? Investigators in Europe have put forward 2 theories. One, that the AstraZeneca vaccine is triggering an unusual antibody in rare cases. And possibility number 2, the cases of blood clots may be linked to birth control pills. Again, none of these theories have been proven. Here's what European Union's drug regulator has to say on this.
The Pharmacovigilance and Risk Assessment Committee of the European Medicines Agency has confirmed that the benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine in preventing COVID-19 overall outweigh the risks of side effects.
What does the World Health Organization say? It says the AstraZeneca vaccine is safe. We spoke to some medical experts before we could talk to you about the controversy tonight, and they said when it comes to vaccines, benefits outweigh the risks. Remember this. There are 2 things they pressed upon. One is the rarity of the cases. Blood clots are indeed rare. And point number 2, the need for more data and studies into these cases of blood clotting. Why? So that experts can segregate the group that is showing an adverse effect to the vaccine, so that doctors can warn people with certain medical preconditions, certain comorbidities against taking the AstraZeneca vaccines. They could opt for other Wuhan virus vaccines. The next question is this. Are side effects to vaccines normal? Yes, certain side effects are, like pain, swelling or redness in the area where the shot was given, mild fever, chills, weakness, diarrhea, vomiting, muscle and joint aches. Experts say that such side effects are a sign that our bodies are starting to build an immunity against the disease, so do not worry about them. Side effects may differ depending on your age, your gender, and your medical history. You see, a vaccine helps you build immunity by imitating an infection. Your body is basically being infected with a living but weakened virus. So your body is reacting to it, and that is normal. But yes, if any of these side effects stay for too long or become severe, you must see a doctor. What about the blood clots? Here's what the European Medicines Agency said earlier this evening.
Prague, after a very in-depth analysis, has concluded that the reported cases of unusual blood clotting following vaccination with the AstraZeneca vaccine should be listed as possible side effects of the vaccine.
Possible side effects of the vaccine. So it all comes down to one question. What should you do? Should you take the AstraZeneca vaccine or not? Well, numbers say blood clots are real, but they're also rare. Experts say the benefits outweigh the risk. So again, what should you do? For starters, do not listen to uninformed advice. It is being generously dished out on WhatsApp groups and social media. Instead, consult your doctor. Only a professional will be able to take your medical condition and history into account and tell you whether or not you should be taking the AstraZeneca vaccine. And remember, for most of us, these vaccines can prove to be lifesavers. When your turn comes, do take the shot. Now to the biggest story from Africa. The world's longest river, the Nile, is at the center of a diplomatic war. 3 countries are locked in this battle: Ethiopia, the Sudan and Egypt. Now, Ethiopia has built a dam on the Nile. It is Africa's largest dam. Egypt and the Sudan are opposing it. They say nobody can lay claim to the waters of the Nile. Now, Ethiopia remains adamant, and by now several rounds of negotiations have failed. Our next report tells you how this rift can explode into a major crisis for the continent.
This is the biggest dam of Africa. For Ethiopia, the Grand Renaissance Dam is a matter of pride. But for Egypt and the Sudan, it's a major headache. Since the project kicked off in 2011, these three countries have been locked in a diplomatic dispute over the Grand Renaissance. Ethiopia has built it over the Nile River. Two of its tributaries flow into Egypt and the Sudan. Both countries believe this dam could create more problems. This week, the three parties met in Congo to discuss the dam. After 2 days of conversations, they failed to make any progress. Yet again, Sudan's foreign minister said Ethiopia is violating international law.
We are still placing our hope in the wisdom of President Felix to end these endless negotiations, which the Ethiopian side uses very well to impose a reality on everyone in a way that shows a clear violation of the foundations of international law and, more importantly, the principles of good cooperation between neighbors, which we all clearly called for. We are talking about how we can look at all the 250 million people living in all the three countries and achieve their interests in one unified way.
Both Egypt and the Sudan depend heavily on the Nile for different reasons. Nearly 100 million Egyptians rely on the Nile for fresh water. For the farmers, it's a source of livelihood. As for the Sudan, the dam may threaten the country's own water stations. So what do Egypt and the Sudan want? Assurances from Ethiopia. They want to know how much water will be released each year from the Grand Renaissance, especially during a drought situation. Egypt wanted to include international mediators in the talks. Ethiopia rejected the proposal. It has announced a second filling of the dam for July. But the opposing sides could be planning a major escalation. Egypt's foreign minister has said that they will raise the dispute before the international organizations, including the United Nations Security Council. Last week, Egypt's president Abdel Fattah el-Sisi issued a warning. He said if water supplies are affected by Ethiopia's moves, it will lead to an inconceivable instability in the region. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
There are two types of countries in this world. One that's benevolent and the other that is malevolent. The Wuhan virus pandemic has clearly put every country in either of the baskets. No points for guessing that China is in the latter. It is malevolent. It exported a deadly virus and it created hurdles for countries who were trying to get vaccines. I'll give you an example. Taiwan. China created hurdles for Taiwan. China reportedly forced Germany's BioNTech to pull the plug on its deal with Taiwan, not give vaccines to Taiwan. And that's not it. China also used vaccine diplomacy to pursue geopolitics. In other words, it weaponized vaccines. Case in point, Paraguay. China told Paraguay it will get millions of doses of Chinese vaccines, but on one condition. Paraguay should snap ties with Taiwan. Why would China do this? Because it claims Taiwan as its own territory. It tells the world to follow a one-China policy. It says countries should not have diplomatic ties with Taiwan. They should only see it as a part of China. So most countries in the world follow suit. They do not recognize Taiwan. They've bowed to Chinese pressure. Only 15 countries have formal diplomatic ties with Taiwan, and Paraguay is one of them. In fact, it is the only South American country to recognize Taiwan, and China wants to change that. During the pandemic, it began putting pressure on Paraguay. What happened next? Taiwan approached India for help, and India shipped 100,000 doses of Covaxin to Paraguay. The shipment was dispatched on the 26th of March. It was sent as a gift from the government of India. And that's not all. Reports say India will be sending another 100,000 vaccines to Paraguay. Taiwan said India's vaccine Maitri will, quote-unquote, relieve a lot of pressure for a lot of countries. What does China say? It denies using vaccines to persuade Paraguay. It hasn't responded to reports of India sending vaccines. As for India, Paraguay is not an exception. It is one of the many countries that India has helped during the pandemic. As we speak, Indian vaccines have reached 84 countries across the world, and this includes grants, commercial shipments, and vaccines given as part of the COVAX alliance, the Global Vaccine Alliance. India's vaccine program is being lauded globally. This is something that China wanted. Share/sell its vaccine globally and earn a lot of praise for it. So China offered free vaccines. It also offered loans and deals. But the world remained wary. And when China failed in its mission, it started crying foul. Chinese media accused India of interference, of preventing Chinese vaccines from reaching South Asia. It also questioned the efficacy of Indian vaccines. India shipping Covaxin to Paraguay is like hammering China's Achilles heel. It is not just a reminder of China's failed vaccine nationalism, but also of India's growing closeness to Taiwan. Earlier this week, India and Taiwan exchanged condolences, and that had the dragon breathing fire. The Chinese embassy in India was quick to put out a statement. Let me quote, "There is but one China in the world. Taiwan is an inalienable part of the Chinese territory. All countries that have diplomatic relations with China should firmly honor their commitments to one China policy, which is also Indian government's official standing," unquote. What made China flip? As I said, an exchange of messages between New Delhi and Taipei. Taiwan condoled the killing of 22 Indian security personnel in the state of Chhattisgarh in India. And India expressed its condolence for the victims of the Taiwan train mishap. India's message was a clear shift from the past. This time, India did not refer to Taiwan as Chinese Taipei. Take a look at what India said. "We are deeply saddened by the loss of so many lives in the railway accident in Taiwan." Those words are too bitter for China to swallow. 2021 is turning out to be the summer of coups, a successful one in Myanmar, an attempted one in Jordan, and an imaginary one in Turkey. This weekend, there was one in Sri Lanka as well, not a political coup, but a pageant coup. The rightful winner of Mrs. Sri Lanka was stripped of her crown on national television. The episode ended with an onstage brawl and a trip to the hospital. 2 days later, the crown has been returned. But what fueled this controversy in the first place? Our next report tells you.
The crown goes to the first runner-up.
M. Night Shyamalan couldn't have scripted this any better. A queen snatching another woman's crown. Blood, tears, and heartbreak. All cocooned in a night of glitz and glamour. Welcome to Mrs. Sri Lanka, where controversy was crowned winner and confusion runner-up. Let's hit rewind now for some context. The setting is Mrs. Sri Lanka 2021. It's a beauty pageant, open only to married women. After a few rounds of regressively pitting women against each other, the judges made their decision.
Contestant number 20!
Pushpika De Silva would be Mrs. Sri Lanka. Cue celebrations. Happy faces all around. The calm before a street brawl. From this moment on, it was less of a pageant and more of a soap opera, as the top 3 contestants greeted the audience. A 4th character stormed onto the stage. It was Caroline Jury, a former Mrs. World and Mrs. Sri Lanka. Jury took the mic and dropped a bomb.
As per the Mrs. World Inc., there is a rule that you all have to be married and not divorced. So, I'm taking my first step saying that the crown goes to the first runner-up.
With that, she proceeded to remove the crown from De Silva's head. It was anything but ceremonious, tugging and pulling at her hair, ultimately sending De Silva to the hospital. But the deed was done. The runner-up was suddenly wearing the crown, and thousands of Sri Lankans watched from their couch in utter disbelief. Talk about Super Sunday entertainment. Couple of days later, cooler heads prevailed. Turns out, De Silva was separated from her husband, not divorced, so technically she didn't break any rules. The crown and the cash prize were returned to her, but it wasn't a dream second coronation. No spotlights, no audience.
There are a lot of mistakes I've made in my life. My life went wrong in ways I can't believe. But in all of these occasions, it is my parents who gave me the strength.
De Silva says she has forgiven those involved in the pageant coup, but Caroline Jury isn't off the hook. Mrs. World Inc. has asked Jury to apologize. As for the 2021 edition, it will accept whoever Sri Lanka sends, no questions asked. Eligibility rules are for the scourge of beauty pageants, an outdated policy plaguing an already outdated contest. They have claimed multiple pageant winners in the past. 2012, Carolina Duran was stripped of her crown in the Miss Dominican Republic contest. She was married, but claimed to be single. 2018, Veronika Didusenko's Miss Ukraine crown was stripped. Why? Because she was a divorced mother. Pageants cultivate drama, but sometimes things get out of hand, like in Sri Lanka. But De Silva has regained her crown. So is it fair play? A crown is, by definition, a flag of injustice. So, to say justice has been served would in itself be a disservice. Bureau Report, WION. World is one.
Well, that is a wrap for this edition of Gravitas. Before we go, let me say something that you've all heard before. Nothing is impossible. I know nothing new about it. It's an old quote. Nothing is impossible. But some people bring it to life. Tonight, I want to leave you with a special story. This year, more than 60 refugees and para-athletes are training to participate in the Tokyo Olympics. They have escaped war and persecution. And today, they are striving to compete on the biggest stage in world sport. Their journey has been very difficult, but also very, very inspiring. Watch this. We'll see you tomorrow.